have everyone? When we have a quorum, I'm going to call order the November 9 meeting of the MPO Executive Committee, and that's for motion and second. Motion by Holmes, second by Gatto. All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Abstentions. Motion carries. All right. You have the October 12 meeting minutes. Approved. Second by Gatto. Any discussion? All in favor, say aye.
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 Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? Motion carries. All right, for the consent and vote contracts and expenses, let's get that up on the screen here. So we are going to, I'm pulling off the contract with Story County Housing Trust Fund for now. We do have there's an amendment to the existing Story County Housing Trust Fund that will stay on there. That's not related to the new contract that is being pulled. But before we vote on this, let me just give a little explanation. Obviously, we've had a lot of discussion on this. I've asked staff to pull this off for now. And the process would be, first of all, they didn't get the Story County Housing Trust Fund didn't get us a contract in time to approve for today anyway. So that's one point. But pull this off for now. My plan is to have an extended meeting so we can have some discussion on the extended policy committee meeting. So we can have some discussion as far as outside contracts and scope of that, and have a consensus of this organization, so we can decide moving forward to what extent this organization is going to be doing outside contracts. So I've heard that loud and clear. I understand that. I think we need to have that discussion. We're working on a date and a facilitator to do that. I'm calling it a strategic plan light, I guess. Plan for about a half day. We don't have a policy committee meeting in December, so I'm going to ask the policy committee to devote a half day. I know December is a busy month, but we need to keep things going in order to, if we are to do this later, we need to be able to timely respond at the first of the year if we're going to do this. So I tentatively looked at Monday, December 19th. Joe, you said Mondays tend to work better. So I've looked at possibly looking at December 19th on Monday in the afternoon to have a meeting to discuss this. So that's my plan right now. So for purposes of today, then we would approve the balance of the contracts that are on the screen, other than the Story County Housing Trust Fund one, which is certain. Todd, did you have anything further to add on any of these other existing contracts on there?
The two Denton Davis Brown ones are legal fees for some of the work on the bike ordinance, some of the questions that came up during that discussion. And then also on the water trails, the amendments to some of the agreements and reviewing parts of that. The Rival Solutions is the software we use for the data bike. We renewed that license for another 6 months. And then the Story County Housing Trust item that's on there is an amendment to our current contract. They received additional ARPA funding for that project, and this just incorporates that funding into that. Be happy to answer any questions.
This is Tom Hoggensmith. Mr. Chairman, I just make a comment. I don't want to spend a lot of time on it. I'm going to link the agenda today, but between now and the 19th, when we have the philosophical discussion, which I push forward, which I think we need to have as an organization about how we move ahead in the future. But frankly, scheduling individual meetings with executive committee members to try to convince folks that the policy that staff is recommending is the one that they want them to support. Frankly, I think that's inappropriate, at least has the appearance of inappropriateness, and certainly lacks transparency for folks that want to hear those discussions by the full executive committee. So I hope we can refrain from scheduling any more meetings like that have an appearance of not being fully transparent with the general public.
Tom, I understand your point. I have addressed this you and I haven't discussed this. I've addressed this issue with Joe. Joe expressed a similar comment to me. I'll take credit or blame, whatever you want to call it. Again, the purpose of those individual meetings were not to lobby for one thing. You may think it's different. You can characterize it how you want to characterize it, Tom. My goal was to disseminate information to each member of this committee. And we thought it would be good to, people were saying that they didn't have the background information. So I asked Todd and Dylan to put the information together and let's sit down and answer questions ahead of the following meeting so we can answer questions. And certainly, this is a public meeting today. And if this contract would have been on the agenda for today, we certainly would have had any open discussion, further discussion on that. But the purpose of those individual meetings was certainly just to get background information to each member of this committee. And then if there are questions from that, then we can follow up with that ahead of this meeting in December. That was the goal here. So,
Mr. Chairman, I'm not accusing anyone of anything. I'm just saying it could have the appearance of.
With all due respect, it sounds like you are. So, I mean, again, these are calls. I'm sorry to interrupt, but I just want to say that you can blame me if you want to blame anybody on it. And so that's it. It was just a matter of getting information out. We are where we are right now, and we're going to have the meeting in December. We can have the full open discussion at that meeting in December.
Okay, I just wanted to point that out and ask for some consideration.
Consideration of what?
I just asked consideration that we try not to do that again before the 19th, so that we don't have any appearance of lacking transparency as an organization. That's all, Bob.
All right. That's fair.
So a couple questions that I asked Mr. Chair, and I haven't received the answer during those private meetings that we had was, you talked about our assessment possibly would change if we didn't have contracts. But then when I asked a question about our contracts that we have right now, which have been approved, I haven't got the answer from you guys. And that's something that we need to be more transparent about when we have the discussion. And I know that we've talked openly about that, with on the conversation. But I think that needs to be clear, because I know that's been the message, like your assessment's going to go up if we don't have the contracts. Well, we already have contracts, but you're asking to do additional contracts with all these other communities to do stuff that not only housing, but I mean, we're talking about facade improvements in smaller communities. We're talking about RV parks that we're going to design, things like that are completely, in my opinion, it's not the job of the MPO, but we're going to have that discussion. But so do you have that answer, Dylan, that our current contracts that we have right now, are we okay with our assessment? Because I've asked that question each year as we go through the budget cycle.
The current contracts that we have, the way that we put together this fiscal year's budget, but it did include the housing thing that we're not approving now. That was in the budget that we approved this year. We discussed that in February and in March and in May.
The Story County housing was part of our budget.
Correct. So with that in there, yes, our assessments are fine. If you take that out and we don't do anything going forward, that's where we start to need to have those discussions of assessments or other contracts that maybe are more
Transportation related,
amenable to committee. Yeah.
because that was our strategic planning was, I mean,
And
when we
these
went
are-
through the strategic planning, we said, yes, we want to diversify, but we want you to go get contracts that are transportation related. Housing is not transportation related. So to even include that in a budget conversation, I mean, that is not part of our strategic planning, nor should it ever been that way at all. So, I mean, that's
Just so I understand, Dylan, I just want to understand this. So it was budgeted for to do that work. I hear you, and it went into the budget, but did you also include in the budget then we're going to need to increase staff by 2 employees as well as increase our lease space? Was that all part of the budget also?
No, in the budget, we did add 3, if you want to count the MPO employee, we did add 3 people. So one was a planner to do some of these housing or other contracts. One was the MPO employee, and one was our accountant. And those were in the budget, those were discussed. What we've been what we shared with a lot of the, all the executive committee members in these one-on-one meetings, the question came up about lease space, and we showed what would happen if we did need to increase staff and therefore did need to add additional space, what the ramifications would be on the budget in that scenario. But to do the Story County contract that's in the budget, no, we would not need to add any more staff beyond what we have today.
Dylan, this is Ruth. Can you hear me?
Yep.
Yep, I'm struggling a little from out of town. I just want to make a point to what Joe said, and it's a point well taken by him, but I wanted to add this so it does get considered in the bigger discussion we're going to have, that I chaired the long-range transportation for a couple of sessions of that, and a very, very good deal of the conversation on our long-range transportation centered around housing. Now, what you want to do with that, I mean, it was difficult to have a long-range conversation about infrastructure and transportation without talking about land use. Land use included the housing, obviously. I don't know what you want to do with that today. I mean, I'm just making that remark that may need to be part of the discussion. Tom, that you were talking about, that I'm with you on that, we do need to have. But I do think we kind of need to talk about that discussion. And then, of course, what those kind of things can bring to a community that can't find those kind of contracts elsewhere.
Here's my suggestion. Thank you, Ruth, for that. First of all, I want to thank everybody for the comments, but here's my suggestion. We're kind of now getting into this ahead of, the full policy committee discussion on this. Here's my suggestion. If you have questions that you want answered ahead of this meeting, you have comments, questions, whatever, get them to Todd and Dylan. I'll have them compile all the questions for anybody ahead of time. We will have them answer them, distribute that out to everybody, so everybody has the same information ahead of the meeting. You can see what everybody else has asked. You can see the same information that's all asked. We'll distribute that ahead of the meeting, and then we will have the full discussion at that meeting in December.
Appreciate that. That's appropriate, Mr. Chairman.
And I'll just say that as one of the participants of these one-on-one meetings, I didn't really feel there was any lobbying. Being a newer member to the MPO exec is kind of a background information and afforded me an opportunity to ask some questions, help me get prepared. So at no point in time did I feel lobbied. I was able to ask a bunch of questions and they were answered. So the one-on-one wasn't so much lobbying as it was for me, it's just getting me up to speed on the MPO and some of the historical context since I'm newer to this board.
So just pertaining to this contract at Story County, can you kind of give us a rundown of what we're voting on for this work that we're already doing? I guess. So,
Andrew, maybe that's what he's talking about.
okay.
Yep, so Story County Housing Trust Fund received ARPA funding from Story County. And so the work that we would be doing would be to do some housing work, which would be they're looking at building a home in Story County. We wouldn't be building a home, we're just managing that, get it back end of that, and doing some additional funding related to housing. So funding.
Who's building?
Essentially managing the grant.
Yeah, managing the grant side.
I thought we were pulling the Story County Housing Trust Fund off of this list to vote today. Is that not correct, Bob?
And what we're doing is there are two contracts related to Story County Housing Trust Fund. That's exactly what we're talking about now. The new contract we've been discussing, the 3-year contract, is being pulled today. The other one that's on there, the amended contract, this is an amendment to an existing contract that we have we're just answering the question for Joe. So that's an existing contract, and the one that's still on there is an amendment to that contract.
So
And that has to be voted on now as opposed to after our meeting in December?
Yes, I understand.
So I'm still a little confused, and I apologize. Andrew, you talked about building a house. I don't understand. I don't understand what our role is in Story County that we've been already doing in this housing trust. What's our role
It would
as the
be
MPO?
just to manage the organization. Because
Manage what organization?
the housing, trust.
And so who here has the background to do the housing? Is that you?
I work on it currently, yes. On the back end, to do the keeping track of the grant funding and that sort of thing.
It's,
And how much is the grant, the original grant? When did we enter into this contract? I'm sorry, maybe I was gone that meeting, but
That was in March.
that's the meeting that I was gone in. Yeah, I was on vacation in March, so that makes sense that I would know about that. That's my own fault, but I guess I didn't realize that we were already into a contract in a community that it's not even a member community, which that's where the initial problem.
Joe, this is Ruth. I can kind of speak to the history of that. I'll try to be brief. Warren's story and help me, Andrew, what was the final county?
Story is its own separate.
Yes, three of us were swinging out there because we aren't contiguous, that were not part of the housing of a housing trust fund. We were the last three counties in the state that were not part of a housing trust fund. Warren County has attempted for 7 years to try to get someone to administrate a county housing trust fund. We went to several entities that didn't, including Polk County Housing Trust, the Moines Partnership, other state housing trust funds, and were unsuccessful in getting anyone with a housing background to administrate us. Then we worked with Iowa Finance Authority that helped facilitate some of that effort to get the last three counties, even though not contiguous, to form a housing trust fund. Because the MPO stepped up and said they would administrate that, we were able to form a housing trust fund. For instance, Warren County, in just the short time that we have had that contract, has now been able to utilize the availability of those state funds to distribute almost $1 million to help with housing efforts in Warren County. So it was the but for the MPO, I believe we would still be out there swinging, not be able to form a housing trust fund. So they're administrating it. There is a board that there is a housing county trust fund board as well. So, I, as a Warren County participant, am grateful.
So appreciate that background, Ruth. I guess I'm kind of with Joe, though. And maybe it's my fault. Maybe I should have seen it, but I didn't realize we were in an existing contract. I thought we were going to put all this conversation we're having right now off until after that strategic planning session in December. I guess I need to understand what the exigency is to have to vote on this month, as opposed to after we have the formal discussions on all this.
Part of it, Ted, is these federal ARPA funds, they're wanting to use them. And so we're trying to get them so we can manage them and move their projects forward. And it's similar to managing the STBG grants. That's really what we're doing, only it's federal housing dollars.
Well, that's fine that they want to spend the ARPA funds, but can they not wait a month?
Have until 2027 to allocate ARPA funds, correct, Todd? I mean, that's typically how the criteria is.
Yes, I had this question. I mean, we have this contract. Are you suggesting that the whole contract for the housing trust fund is in jeopardy? And if so, where are we going to go to be administrated? And if we are administrating the contracts, I think it only natural that we're going to administrate such as this when ARPA funds come into it. I don't think it's a huge additional impact on the organization, and we're already in the contract.
I just have a technical question. It's not a philosophical question. It's just a technical question. So we have an existing contract. I mean, this is probably for Todd or John or whoever's administering. So we have an existing contract that we are administering, and this action you're asking us today amends the contract, how I read it here, and I haven't seen the fine print, but it increases the contract amount, I see, just by the by the bullet points here. It increases, increased contract amount and staff support. So evidently there's a reason the contract needs amended. Otherwise you would just reinstate the existing contract or just renew the contract, right?
Well, I mean, we could do that. We thought it was more transparent to bring this to the exec, since this funding will extend this contract out for an additional time, and you'll be seeing that. So we just thought it made sense to bring it forward.
No, I appreciate that. My question is more, okay, so there's an amendment, or otherwise this action we take would just say we're going to renew the existing contract. We could take action, renew the existing contract, but that's not what this is. This says we're going to amend the contract. Can you speak specific about what the amendments are?
It's go ahead.
No, I'm done. That's my question.
It's the $40,000 in ARPA funding that Story County transferred to the Story County Housing Trust Fund to continue doing additional housing repairs. We're just managing the federal grant side of that. We're not managing the repairs per se. We're just managing the federal dollars. And we get a reimbursement for our staff time and a little administration fee out of that.
So that's something over above what we were doing with the existing contract.
It's the same work. It's just they got more money to continue that work.
Okay.
But Todd, and I just asked Dylan the same question, but I'd like to be transparent so everyone hears. We did not have a full policy committee meeting in March. So that contract that you entered with Story County in housing, which is quite frankly, in my belief, never in our strategic planning, you were able to do that just by having the executive committee approve it and never taking it to the policy committee, correct?
Let me interject this though. Joe, you said you were maybe not there, but
I don't believe, I might have been on the
the
phone
minutes show you chaired the meeting.
in March.
And as far as this contract, it was moved by Weaver and seconded by Hawkinsmith to approve it.
In Story County housing.
Yes,
Okay.
that's what the minutes show.
Well,
So guys, I mean,
I
you know, you're now sniping at this contract.
I am sniping at it, and I must have been sleeping at the wheel that day, and I apologize, because that completely is.
The minutes show that you were chairing the meeting and Ted moved it and Tom seconded it.
Okay. Well, I'm gonna be inconsistent, and I'm going to vote no on that particular part of it. And because I just think that we could hold off and wait. We can hold off and wait for that. I mean, the ARPA funds you don't have to do that until 2027. So I mean, we can have this discussion, and instead of having the discussion again now, we should have pulled them both off and had the discussion like I thought we were going to do after having a discussion with you yesterday, but that's fine.
So-
I'll just
Okay,
vote.
so
Can I say something?
this is,
Stop. Point of order. We're gonna vote on the 3 contracts first. There are no opposition that I hear with regard to the top 3 contracts, are there? None? Okay, so I'm gonna ask for a motion to approve the Denton's, 2 Denton's contracts and the Rival Solutions contract.
So moved.
Motion by Holt,
Second, Riva.
second by Riva. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
I,
hi.
Extensions, that carries. All right. Let's do this properly, guys. We're gonna have, and I want to ask to be recognized, please, so we're not all talking over each other, especially when we're on Zoom. This makes it very dysfunctional. So I'm going to ask, first of all, for a motion and a second on the Story County Housing Trust Fund contract. Then we can have further discussion on it before a vote, and we're going to take a vote on it.
Move to approve. This is Ruth.
Motion by Ruth,
second, this is Russ Trimble.
by Russ. All right. Who would like to discuss this now at this point?
This is Ruth. Then I have a question, Joe, about this. And we have a housing trust fund that has formed and been recognized by the state that is now eligible for state funds. I need to know sitting here today if that's in jeopardy, because that's huge. I mean, the extension of this contract is only adding to the pot of money that they're working with. So for today's purposes, I don't understand the issue. If you want to, yeah, let's talk about it in the future. But the Housing Trust Fund has been formed. So if that's a future discussion, fine, but I think we need to understand what we're talking about here. There is a Housing Trust Fund form that is being administered that is eligible for state dollars. And that would, if we're going to have that discussion, that's huge.
But are we extending the length of the contract, Todd? Or are we adding to the length?
It's not really adding to the length of the contract. It's adding funding to the contract.
And I have no idea why we would refuse to do that at this point.
When does the contract expire, Todd?
Andrew, I'd have to ask Andrew that. I don't have the date of that on the top of my head. I'm sorry.
Gunner knows.
So I think, sorry.
Chair, I just can draw your attention to Russ Trimble.
Oh, I'm sorry. Russ, thank you. You want to make a point?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead.
Thank you. A lot of good discussion being had today. And I respect everybody's opinions on this. I think that Tom Hawkinsmith and Joe Gatto make a good point. Our main mission for this organization is regional transportation, right? I think everybody would agree to that. And we need to be focusing on transportation. Okay, that said, as long as we are taking care of transportation and we are not dropping the ball on that, which it doesn't seem like we are. It sounds like we're doing our jobs on transportation and doing everything we're supposed to be doing. These other things that we're doing, whether it be administering the project for the water trails or these housing trust funds, I think that's fine to do. We're helping out some of our member communities in this, as Ruth said. Where I would start to have issues is if, again, we are not taking care of what we need to in the transportation world, we're dropping the ball there, or if this is costing us additional money, which it's not. This is why we had this analysis done to see, is this a benefit to us, or is this going to cost us? And the analysis showed that this is a benefit to us doing this. And that, to Mayor Holmes' point, nobody was lobbying anybody. It was presenting information that we had requested on whether or not this is a benefit to administer these housing trust funds. And it shows that it is a benefit to us. We're taking care of our transportation issues. So I understand the points that are being made. Our main mission is transportation. We need to not lose sight of that. But I think what we're doing here is helping out other member communities. We're getting additional funding. We're benefiting from it. I just want to make sure if and when these contracts end, are we going to be, is it just going to be they're gone, the funding's gone, the staff is gone, everything that came with it is going to go with it at the same time? We're not going to be sitting in a situation where, well, because we lost this contract, everybody's now got to put in a little additional money because we were using some of these funds to pay for ongoing things. Is it self-contained?
It's self-contained, and if with the money dried up, the position that's funded with that would also be gone. No, these are totally self-contained funding sources. It doesn't touch the MPO. The MPO doesn't touch them.
Okay, but we are benefiting from this because we've got additional staff that are able to do additional things in the way of transportation and other items.
Yeah, and we get a little administration fee that benefits the MPO.
Okay. So again, understand the main mission's transportation. We need to focus on that, but these other things are helping our member communities. I think it makes sense. And whether we wait another month to vote on this or vote on it right now, really nothing's going to change between now and then. So I'm supportive of this and going to be voting yes today.
Mr. Chairman, I keep getting, please bear with me, and I hate to drag this on any further, and but I need to understand, Todd, you said we will have to hire additional staff just for the piece we're going to be voting on today, right?
No.
Well, okay, because you said when the money runs out, the staff part goes away. That's what made me think about, well, you must be talking about a staff person. So this won't take additional staff or any additional space, right?
No, we can, this work's being done with our staff as is right now in the space we have right now.
Okay, that's helpful. The only reason I asked that, because the other piece that we're going to be talking about in December does ask for additional staff and talk about additional lease space, and that is growing the organization significantly. That's the debate we're going to have on the 19th. I appreciate that information. But candidly, yes.
Well, I just go ahead, finish your point. Then I do want to respond to the point you made. But
okay,
Dylan is saying, I mean, we'll have that discussion in December. Thank you, first of all. But Dylan is saying that the contract that we will be discussing does not add staff or require additional space either.
So the one you're talking about today,
the additional one as well. But we can have that discussion later. I just wanted to clarify that.
Okay. But my point is, Mr. Chairman, and I'll finish here and I'm done. I know you're probably pretty pleased about that. What I'll tell you is that, frankly, and this is only my personal opinion, I have lost confidence in the staff to bring information that is consistent with what's going on. And that's the reason that I'm asking as many questions I'm asking. We had an MPO staff person come to the Polk County Board of Supervisors and make a presentation about MIPA. It was a very loose presentation. It was a small amount of money for the county to participate in MIPA. When I brought up the question, is this expanding the organization? Is it expanding the footprint? Oh no, it's just going to make us eligible for more federal money. That's all it does. And then I read through the documentation. It shows things about emergency management and all these type of things that we're already paying into for emergency management. And really, I'm thinking, okay, well, what does all this do? Come to find out, emergency management was just fluff. We're not going to be doing emergency management. AJ Mum does that. So I just am not confident in some of the messaging that I get. And that's why I'm asking the question. So please bear with me.
All right. Thank you, Tom. Mark.
My comments are only related to the amendment, not the larger discussion, because the larger discussion we've agreed is going to happen in December. This is an amendment to an existing contract, and to be a good business partner, we need to honor the contract. We're not adding link. We're actually securing additional funds for the housing trust. I see no problem with voting yes for this. It's something we already voted for in March or April, whatever month it was, to get into this. So it's kind of watering the bridge. It's an existing contract. We have to honor our business relationship that we entered into. And if we don't, then we lose all credibility.
Any other comments before we take a vote?
Yeah, Tom, Bob, I'd like to make a quick comment. So a lot of great points here. I agree with a lot of what's being said, and Russ, you make many good points, as does Ruth. The idea that nothing's going to change between this month and next month, to me, is all the more reason to put this off until next month to figure out, what is the mission of the MPO and how are we moving forward? So, one of my concerns is, it's just going to be contained. It's very small. There's no impact to the MPO, but there's always scope creep that seems to happen with these types of situations. And this is something that's outside of our area and outside of our focus. And so I don't remember that March meeting, and I apologize as well. I have no memory of that whatsoever. So, but I don't feel like this has to be voted on right now. So I'm going to be voting no.
And so just real quick, how many other member communities are part of the Story County Housing Trust Fund? Is it only Carlisle? Is that what we're talking about that are currently part of the MPO?
No,
Just to clarify, there's two housing trust funds. There's the Central Iowa Housing Trust Fund, which is Warren, Marion, Jasper, and Boone County. And then there's the Story County Housing Trust Fund. We manage both of those. They both operate similarly, but they're two different contracts, two different organizations. the central Iowa one, we've had that contract for a couple of years now.
So,
Yeah, as I understand it, Andrew can be more specific, but it's it's all the communities in those 3 counties as part of the Central Iowa Trust Fund. Story County separately, it would be it would be countywide,
Correct.
correct?
Right.
Yeah, Story County is just Story County, Central Iowa.
Right.
so the Story County Housing Trust Fund doesn't affect any member community of the MPO. Is that what I'm hearing you guys say? Okay, so we're not obligated. This doesn't affect Ruth at all. We're still handling her concern for her community and under the Central Iowa Housing Trust.
Right. A bigger, yeah, I'm just talking about it as a bigger concept.
And so is that when we talked about these 4 funding grants totaling $1 million and then 11 grant applications still awaiting a response from Adel, Boone, Elkhart, Marion County, Norwalk, Ogden, Pella, Redfield, and Warren County. What is that a part
That
of?
is-
Okay, so that's another organization that we've started that's under the umbrella of the MPO.
It's not under the umbrella of the MPO, it's its own organization, but the MPO has a contract with MEPA to help staff it.
Okay. And so we're the funding agent of it.
Not even the funding agent, we just help provide we provide the housing for Caleb. Caleb's sitting over there, so Caleb has an office here, even though he's a MEPA employee. We provide his payroll, that kind of stuff, but then.
And it'd be a fee for them.
Staffing support as needed. And we have a contract for $30,000 worth of staffing support.
So we pay for his staffing and then you oversee
No.
him as.
MIPA pays for the staffing. He basically rents space here in our office.
But you're not his boss or.
Todd is
Todd
by
is,
contract, that again was approved by the MPO. is his boss.
so Todd is, so we still oversee it as far as.
But from a board
staffing.
position, yes, as far as staffing, but as far as making policy decisions, MIPA has its own board that's been appointed by those member communities that handle that.
But ultimately Todd reports to all of us. So how's that work?
There was a contract that was approved by the MPO. And MIPA.
And then any time I spend on MIPA is reimbursed to the MPO.
And any time that Dylan or Zach spends on MIPA, that's also reimbursed or they
Yes.
don't spend?
It's
And
very little.
very minimal, but yes, it's reimbursed.
And these are things that, again, we would cover at that December meeting.
So is there harm that we hold off and have this discussion? Well, I mean, if you guys already have a motion on the table, you can just vote, but I mean, I don't see the harm of waiting until we have a further discussion.
Well, we wouldn't be able to approve this in December though, because this has to be done before.
Well, the December meeting that we're gonna have is after exec, and there's no policy meeting, so it wouldn't be able to be voted on until January. And I don't think Story County Housing Trust can wait until January. They want to get moving on this, correct?
Any further discussion? All right, we'll call for the vote. I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote since I know we're gonna have some no's, so I'm gonna ask Tracy or Todd, who's gonna, Tracy, okay. So I'm gonna ask for a roll call vote on this.
City of Urbandale,
Yes,
City of Norwalk,
Yes.
City of Clive,
No.
West Des Moines,
Yes.
City of Altoona,
Yes.
City of Ankeny.
Yes.
Let's see, we have Polk City, I don't believe it's present. Polk County,
No.
City of Carlisle,
Yes.
City of Des Moines, Joe Gatto.
No,
Would be it.
Okay.
7-3.
okay, the motion passes. All right. Thank you. All right, item 5 is the report and vote on the calendar year 2023 meeting dates.
Yeah, next slide, please. Our typical meeting dates, nothing unusual there. We did move the May meeting back due to the partnership trip scheduled for May 10th through 12th. and our usual no meetings in March, July, and December for policy. I'd recommend approval. Happy to answer any questions.
Move the meeting dates.
Motion by
All county.
Hawkins, second by Holm. Discussion. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All right,
Hey,
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions, that carries. Item 6 is a report and vote on the FFY 2023-26 Transportation Improvement Program amendments. Aspen.
Thank you. We have 3 amendments to consider again this month. The first comes from the city of Des Moines, Walnut Street Bridge Replacement Project. We are just changing this funding source from SWAP STBG to STBG federal aid. Again, because we have that change in sort of discontinuing SWAP dollars moving forward, a letting date change for this one, which is why that conversion needs to happen. The second one up for consideration is DART has a transit shelters project that needs to be added to this year's TIP. It was in the previous years, but again, they weren't able to spend the funds yet, and so we're adding it to our current TIP. And then the last one is from the DOT. They had an increase of project funds, and so because it was over 30% change, we need to account for that in our with that, I recommend approval and I take any questions.
Move approval.
Motion by God. Second. Second by Holm. Any further discussion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
hi.
Opposed, same sign. Abstentions. Motion carries. All right, item 7 is report on the STBG program schedule. Zach.
Thank you. Just wanted to provide you with a quick update on the program schedule for federal fiscal year 2027 funding. Applications are going to be posted on the MPO website on December 1st of this year. We'll collect the applications by January 6th of next year. Then we will schedule the presentations for the funding subcommittee sometime in mid-February, late February, early March, somewhere in that time frame. So just wanted to make you aware of those dates and when those applications are going to be posted. I'd be happy to take any questions you have.
All right. Any other questions for Zach on that? Typical. Yep. Thanks, Zach. Item A would be a report on the priority project solicitation for the DC trip.
Good afternoon. Coming back to you with a discussion item about how we go about selecting projects for the DC trip. This is a discussion item on our agenda last month. At that time, when we normally initiate that process, we asked if you want to revisit, given some of the changes. At that time, the indication from the executive committee was that they want to wait till after the elections to have a little more clarity what the landscape looks like before having this discussion. Today, I would ask if there's any guidance you wanted to, if we have enough insight to offer guidance today, or if this is a discussion that we better put off until later. I think staff's view is that there's not enough clarity yet from the results of the election to have an informed discussion. But I would defer to policymakers here to.
Questions, comments? Thoughts?
Wait a little bit long. I think we would have to wait.
Yeah, I would think so. All right, thanks, guys. Item 9 is report on the MPO representative selection process. Bill.
Thank you. As we near the end of the calendar year, we want to start preparing for getting representatives for the next calendar year, since it runs on a calendar year basis. Next week, we will send out, or at least by the end of November, but probably next week, we'll send out a request to all our member communities, asking that they provide their primary and alternate representatives for policy and technical committees. And then either their nominations or their appointees for the executive committee as well. The executive committee works on, if you go to the next slide. Yeah, the executive committee, if you recall, works on, depends on the size of the community for how this works. Communities that are under 50,000 are selected. The executive committee representation is selected by whoever's in that sub area. So we have 3 sub areas. The mayors of those sub areas, or in the case of the county, the chair of the supervisors, gets together, and selects their 2 representatives. So we need those meet those representatives in by the executive committee in February. If you're over 50,000 or Polk County have automatic representation on the executive committee. So in the case of Des Moines, they need to pick which 2 of their 5 representatives serve on the MPO. In the case of anything in West Des Moines, which 1 of their 2 representatives serve, and then in Polk County, it's pretty simple. They're also pretty bad. Well, if there's another slide there. Yeah, which I just covered. So once we get those representatives, the chair will appoint a nominating committee, and from that executive committee pool, we'll get our new officers for the coming year, or nominations for those coming officers for the new year, and the new officers take place in March. So again, we'll send all this out to the member communities in a lot more detail with all the forms you need to fill out and all the deadlines and so forth. But we just want to make sure we cover and remind everybody of how this process works. We kind of leave it up to the communities of how they want it finagle, who's their executive committee representatives, but we just want to let you know the dates and what the bylaws say on how that should work. Are there any questions?
Thanks, Bill. Any questions? Be sure to get this in. That's, you know, this is important. I know it, a lot of stuff to fill out, but it's a little, can't be cumbersome to get everybody together to get the vote on it, but it's so critical to get it done.
It should be easier this year than it wasn't a city council election year. Yeah, so there shouldn't be a large turnover if it was on.
All right, thanks, Bill. All right, item 10 is report on the fiscal year 23 first quarter budget report. On that.
Good afternoon. Looks like the report is for that first 3 months of first quarter. I've actually been here for that first quarter. We're right on schedule. Looks like about a quarter of each one. The 2 that I would point out that might be a little higher is your dues and memberships, but most of those come in right at the beginning of the year. And then the other one was our professional services. We've had a few extra attorney invoices for projects that have been worked on. Any questions?
Any questions for Rhonda? Thank you. Item 11 is report on the Purple Heart Highway. Gunner.
Hello again. I've updated our flow chart here to reflect the postponement of the technical analysis. So you'll see now phase 3 is just labeled as TBD. We continue to work on phase 2, which is the conversations with stakeholders. So the political pieces that will need to happen if this interstate destination were to go forward, namely the exemptions at the state and federal level. Where we're at today is we continue to have conversations with the stakeholders. I will note that the conversations so far have been positive. Recent stakeholder meetings include, this is going back 2 or 3 months now, but our professional delegation, Iowa Youth Leadership, Billy Hunt with the Cultivation Board, Phil Northey with the Exodus Association, as well as Mike Steenhook with the Soil Transportation Coalition. Where we're going from here is starting to broaden our reach with some of the stakeholder groups, namely we'll be working with Northey and Steenhook to form a group of small stakeholders in the ag community to have a discussion here. Hopefully that happens by the end of the month. Also looking for a meeting with Deb Durham and also the corridor communities as well. That's it for me today, but I'd be happy to answer any questions.
All right, thank you, Gunner. Any other questions on this? Rusty, you still have your hand up, or was that from before?
Pretty sure that was from before.
That's from before. Let me lower it. I'm sorry. Huh. There we go.
There you go. All right. Just want to recognize you if you want to talk. Thanks, bud. Okay. Thank you, Gunner. Then we're moving on to the water trails update, item 12. Todd.
Yeah, thank you. And as most of you are aware, yesterday the policy committee approved the bid that was received on November 1st. We received one bid. It was from United and Briley for the amount of just under 41 million for the Scott Avenue phase. It's the in-water phase. We'll have contracts next year for some additional work around the uplands and then another one following for Harriet. And then by 2027, as was discussed yesterday, we would start work on Birdland and Prospect. The build grant budget amount was approximately 40 million. So the bid came in close to that. Icon has the funding available to match the build grant money as well as the project budget. We're meeting later today with the DOT and Federal Highway on getting the contract documents processed and signing with the contractor and keeping that moving forward. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Item 13, legislative updates.
Yeah, there's really nothing to update because we don't know what's gonna happen now. Obviously, there's a lot of bills such as the appropriations bill, I was correct. It is kind of in limbo until we know the results of when that'll be taken up and until we know control of Congress, we just don't know how like it. I could put a big shrug on there.
Item 14, upcoming events. Allison.
Yeah. So there's a handful of links that are already in your packet that I won't go over too much, but the hazard mitigation plan will be starting again next year. So there's a lot of mitigation webinars or workshops and things like that out there that I'd like to bring your attention to, especially as FEMA wraps into that money, and things like that. There's some webinars coming up on that. And then the traffic and safety forum at Trans at the Iowa State is coming up just next week. And that is an all-day event. We inform your staff of this as well, but want to make sure you're aware. The links to anything that was not in the packet we originally received will be in follow-up email. If you have any questions for me, I'd be happy to take that at this time.
Question for Allison? Thank you. All right, item 15 would be to vote on the agenda for this month's policy committee. Motion. Approved. Motion by Holm. Is there a second?
Second.
We want to have a meeting this month? All right, second by Gallo.
I think I'll spend enough time in this room.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed, same sign. Any abstentions? All right, that carries. Item 15, or excuse me, item 16, non-action items. Todd, I think you had one or two.
Yeah, I just had a one, and then there's a grant opportunities that the DOT is having on their SMART program, which is strengthening mobility and revolutionizing transportation. Demonstration projects on advanced smart city and community technologies. The stage one is a planning prototyping type grant, up to $2 million. They're going to do approximately 50 awards across the country. And then that would be followed up by the opportunity to go after stage two funding, which would be the implementation dollars. Only the recipients of stage one would be eligible for stage two. Stage two won't be available until next year, obviously, since they're waiting for that stage one process first, but want to make you aware, your staffs have been advised about this. Applications are due next week. So as your staffs have any question, we'll be happy to try to find answers for those. The other item is, just wanted to let you know, oops, there's another grant. Thriving Communities Grant. Letters of interest for this program are due on December 6th. Again, your staffs have been advised about this to provide technical assistance. There's not funding for this, but they would bring personnel in to help staff work on environmental, climate, and human health policies that affect transportation. I think that's it on the grants. The last item I wanted to mention was our own Aspen Flans is leaving the MPO, moving to Texas. So I just wanted to wish her well and thank her for all the work she's done at the MPO and appreciate her efforts.
All right, anything further for the cause today? All right, our next meeting is on December 7th at 11:30. And we're at the end of the agenda and we're adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.